The objective of this guide is to provide you with all the information you need to be able to carry out single-handedly installation of a floating form with a click system. Why with click system? What does it mean? As you can see, the planks will be joined by clicking, without the need for adhesives or glues. We are going to do the whole installation here, in this room, where we are going to solve some encounters. The door step, a projection, a wall that is somewhat out of square, a step, and we will solve the encounter with a heating pipe which is in our room. Before you begin installing the floor, the first thing you need to do is remove the skirting boards from the room, whether they are made of wood or ceramic. What you have to do now is to check the state of the floor. It must be perfect. There can be no ripples on it, there can be no indentations or protruding parts. Check everything with the help of a ruler or a level, check it is fully support. If this is not the case, you have to apply a self-leveling underlayment over the entire room. You can install this type of floor on any subfloor. It may be a floor of ceramics tiles, but you have to be sure that there are no broken or loose pieces. If this is the case, you must break them, remove the material that is there, and fill it with some spackling paste. Of course, before you start, what you should do is a good cleaning so that the entire floor is in perfect condition. Let's start by cutting the door frames. As you can see, these are the tools we need. We are going to take a piece of the plank that we are going to install and a piece of the insulation that we are going to put underneath. The objective is to cut the door frame to get the new floor to pass under the doors. In this way, we will ensure that the floor adjusts well. First of all, we are going to put an insulation, so that the floor does not move and thus, also provides good acoustic and thermal insulation. I am going to show you some types of insulation you can get. This is polyethylene foam. This one is a foam too, but with a moisture protection, for when you have some moisture on the floor. We are going to place it with the aluminum facing down. In this way we achieve that the humidity does not rise and, on the foam side, we obtain a softer footstep. But, in our case, we are going to install this one which is cardboard insulation too, since we have no problem with our floor. This type of insulation comes in a roll. As you can see, what we do is cut some pieces of the length of the room. Once we have it extended, we are giving the necessary cuts so that the piece fits well to the wall. For this you can use a simple cutter. Before starting to install, it is important that you allow the floor to acclimate to the temperature of the home. Usually, the manufacturer in the instructions will advise you on the necessary time. They are generally about 48 hours. What you have to do is also decide what way you are going to make the installation of the floor. It is normally done in parallel to the longest walls and, in the case of rooms with a more squarer format, we always follow the entrance of light so that the heads always go in the same way as the light. We are going to start installing planks, so let's go to the first row. We start with this wall, because the encounter with the door. And now what need are some wedges. These wedges will ensure an expansion joint around the perimeter of the room. We place the wedges to separate the plank from the wall something more than a quarter inch. Let's go to the next plank. We place some wedges on this side. And now here, in the joint by end joint, we are going to hit to click. This is a quick click system. Since we are going to continue with the corridor, we are going to start now with the first piece of the corridor. We place the piece with the female side towards us, since here we have a male. We are going to mark the molding. This mark will serve as a reference. We introduce the plank and pass the marks that we have made on the molding. Here it is also important to leave the space of the expansion joint. To know how long we have to make the cut, we are going to measure between the edges of the planks. We measure here. And we pass the mark with the tri-square up to the 6.8 centimeters, 27 inches, we need. We now mark on the other side. We are going to fit the first piece now. We introduce it from the front. We are going to leave some space on the wall. We go to the marks we made on the front and introduce the first plank. We are going to bring it near totally against the wall to be able to click with the first row. We take the two previous pieces, introduce the male over the female, and click. Now we place the wedges. We continue with the first row until we finish it. Now we are going to carry out the encounter with the wall out of square. For this, we are going to use this tool. It is an angle finder. We put it here and adjust the blade. We measure from the corner to the encounter with the floor. Now we can take the angle of the wall and the measurement to mark it on the plank and cut it. We are going to mark from the point of the male side the 19 centimeters that we had, and, with the angle finder, we passed just the angle of the wall. That is the cut we have to make. Well, now we are going to start with the second row and, look carefully, the piece that was left over from finishing the first row is the one that will serve to start with the second row. As we are going to make in staggered design, so that the end joints coincide alternatively, what we are going to do is cut it in half. We are going to click on the long side of the plank, align it with the previous plank, and we already have the part attached. The second would be a complete piece. If you look carefully, the encounter of the previous plank will be right in the center. To make this click, what you have to do is the following: start from the long side, align it to this edge and go down. On the long side, the piece is already joined. We can now install the entire floor and making the cuts as I have shown you. We pass the measurement back to the plank and trace again with the angle finder. Now we are going to start with the next row. Look carefully. In this row we would need a complete piece, but due to this notch, we have lost some space, so we have to cut the first row that we are going to put. To do this, with the help of the triangle, we are going to mark the end of the plank here. We put, as always, the wedge and measure from the wedge to the mark that we have just made. Now we position the plank on the mark we made before. We respect the expansion joint and click. It is good that, when you install, you open the packages and mix the planks, instead of installing package by package. In this way you will achieve a much more homogeneous result, because the colors may change from one package to another, a little difference in tone. Thus, you are distributing it all over the floor. Here we have to solve another obstacle. As you can see, we have to cut the plank lengthwise and cut it in the narrow part. And this is the piece that we are going to remove. We put it over here. First, as always, the long side, and we take it to the edge of the end joint. We are going to finish with the last piece. But look closely, because we are also going to line the step with the same material. For this, we need to line the riser and tread. So we will have to put an end molding of this type to be able to finish against the riser and fix the last plank so that it does not rise. What I advise you is to work with small parts. As you can see here, due to its end molding, it will end against the riser, and thanks to this piece, it will step on the floor so that it does not rise. What we do is take one of the remnants that were left over from the cuts that we have been giving to mark it in the riser. We put it there. And, now the canal, this canal that is the one that we are going to fix later to the floor so that when introducing this piece it makes pressure and it is totally fixed. We are going to leave it like that, half taken out, to be able to take all the measurements. We position it there, and what we need to know is how much the canal occupies. Because, from here, we have to leave the wedge enough space to always maintain the expansion joint. Note that, if we put the piece back, the long part of the end molding will perfectly cover the imperfections of the encounter. We are going to put the piece in place and check the result. We put the riser piece back and place the end molding. As you can see, the cap looks perfect. Now we can go cutting all the following rows to the same measure. Since the cut is parallel on the step, we will keep the same angle that we continue to maintain in our angle finder. Now we are going to solve another of our encounters. It's about the notch, like I told you at the beginning. For this, what we do is to place the plank and, as we always do, calculate the expansion joint with the wedge and mark it with the pencil. We already have that mark made, now we only have to know how deep it must be. We measure the gap of the notch and pass it to the plank. And we are going to remove this piece from here as usual with the jigsaw. We are going to start now with the second to last row, but look carefully, this wall here is somewhat curved. What we are going to do is mark, using one of the remnants, the piece that we are going to cut to complete the last row. This row here would bring the end joint to this height. It would be this piece. Before installing it, what we are going to do is place the one that would go in the last place first. We place it there, joining well the joint end and leaving the expansion space. Once we have it in place, we take the width of the plank, we put it against the wall and we mark here. Now we remove the plank. We put the corresponding plank, and we can finish the row and then cut with the jigsaw along the line we have drawn. Remove this and fit this last piece, but you are going to see this right now. Well, we have already reached our last piece, and, in addition, we are also going to resolve the encounter with the heating. We are going to do it in the following way. Pay attention. We are going to take the measurement of the axis of the heating tube and we are going to mark that measure on the corresponding plank. We will now take the reference of the tube in the opposite direction. Now what we have left to do is to drill in the mark that we have made. We need a hole about 0.4 inches larger than the diameter of the tube we have. So we will also leave a space for expansion. We introduce the drill over the center and start drilling. Now we are going to make some cuts in this way so that, when joining the piece with wood glue, the cut we have made is not noticeable at all. To cut it, we are going to use this blade, a back saw that has a very fine blade that will give you a clean cut and remove little material thickness. We introduce it in its place. As you see, through the clearance that we gave it allows us a certain mobility to fix it in its position. We apply the wood glue on the edges. As you can see, we have already prepared the riser. The riser is the piece that will cover this part of the step. We have cut it to the height and width. We introduce it on its place. Let's take the molding and use the angle finder. We are going to help ourselves with this partition that we have on the step. Take the molding to the end of the wall and mark from this point where we have to cut it. To fix the angle so that it is perfectly in its position, we are going to use some of the remnants that were left over during the cut. We introduce it here, so that we have a free part of the plastic angle. We take a piece that is left of a cut and place it to check its position. As you can see, the molding has a cut to mark the riser. And we mark again. Before fixing it, we check that it has been perfectly cut on both sides of the wall.
Perfectamente cortado a los lados de la pared.
And now we apply an adhesive. We are going to have to put some wedges too so that it has its expansion joint. And we put the molding. We have chosen this type of baseboard. As you can see, it is a baseboard that has a canal on the inside to fix a clip on the wall and that the baseboard comes in under pressure. Through the lower hole you can take advantage and pass a telephone cable or an extension cable, those types of cables that we always have lying around on the floor. Let's see what precautions we have to take to install the staples and how to cut it to give it an extraordinary finish. The first thing, of course, is to start removing the wedges that we put during the installation to maintain the expansion joint. These are the clips that will hold the skirting board. We will drill a hole, we will introduce a dowel through it, and we will put a screw. These staples are going to be placed approximately every 20 inches. But the best you can do is to always respect the distances indicated by the manufacturer. Now what we are going to do is take the measurement of the wall. We are going to cut the piece with the miter saw because, since we have angles of 90 degrees, we have to make some cuts at 45. We place the turntable of the machine at 45 degrees. Perfect. We simply have to apply slight pressure until the base engages with the clips we have installed. Now we are going to see other ways to place a baseboard, if the one we are going to use does not have staples. Well, now we would simply have to apply an adhesive and take it to the wall.
Y llevarlo a la pared. Pues aquí, como ves, lo interesante es que el corte
As you can see,
que hemos
the
dado
cut we have made on
a
this
este lado,
side, regardless of the
independientemente del
state of the
estado que tengan
walls,
las
fits us
paredes,
perfectly
nos quede
mitered.
perfectamente ingletado. Después,
Then,
el
the
espacio que
space
nos
we
queda
have left
entre la
between
pared
the
y el
wall and the
zócalo lo
base will be
rellenaremos
filled
con la
with wood
masilla que te
filler.
comenté antes. Mientras el
While the
adhesivo seca,
adhesive
lo que puedes
dries,
hacer
you can
es
put a
colocarle
few
unos
nails,
clavos,
but very
pero eso
fine,
sí, muy
finishing
finos, con cabeza
nails.
perdida. Si
If
no
you
tienes
do
un
not have a
compresor, yo te
compressor,
aconsejo
I advise you
que,
to buy or
bueno, pues
rent
lo
one to make
compres o lo
sure your
alquiles,
work is
con el
perfectly
fin
finished.
de que este trabajo te
If
quede
not, with a
perfectamente
hammer
acabado.
and
Si
some
no, con
nails,
un martillo y
always
unos clavos,
finishing nails,
siempre de
because you
cabeza
will have
perdida,
to sink
tendrás que
completely the
reunir
nail
la
and
cabeza
give
del
it
clavo
wood filler,
y
the
darle
same
una
one
masilla,
that we
la
are
misma
going
que
to
vamos a
use to
utilizar
cover the
para cubrir los
holes, so
huecos,
that the head of the
para que no
nail
se
is
note
not
la cabeza del
noticed.
clavo.
As you can see, the result is perfect. We are going to remove the wedges. In this way, the finishing molding we put on the staircase fits perfectly. Now we are going to work with the last piece that we have left, but look, we are going to do it with 2 remnants. These 2 remnants will cover the entire wall and you have to joint them together. As you can see, the union is impeccable. Absolutely nothing is appreciated. Finally, we must apply the filling. We are going to hit it here, remember? On the heating pipe. We are going to fill in the hole, and applying here filler like a cord.
Aplicando el cordón así, de esta manera. Eso sí.
Of course, before it dries, with the help of a putty knife and some water, try to match the silicone that we just applied with the skirting board. Well, this tutorial has made it this far. You can now start with your installation. Good luck!